I'm sorry I haven't been online in a while, guys. I've been busy with life. I'm sure you understand. It was my birthday on the 4th of July, so I took some time off. Not only from work, but from making videos about conspiracy. I would say conspiracy altogether, but I really haven't taken a break from that, and you never can take a break from it. I guess that's something I've learnt. It's always there, whether I like it or not, or whether I want to get away from it or not. Either way, today I just want to have a little bit of a chat. I do this every now and then just to get a few things off the top of my head, just off my mind. Some things that I've been thinking about, I suppose. So this is quite relaxed, there's no script. And what I want to talk about really is some experiences I've had in the past with what I now would consider demonic. Demonic oppression is a big, strange subject in the truth culture that a lot of people do believe in, mainly Christians, obviously, and even some New Agers to some extent understand that there's negative entities on the other side. But when I talk about demons, not every conspiracy theorist is going to agree with me that that is happening or that is real. I've often heard the response of, if you want to imagine demons, then that's what you'll get, in relations to things like consciousness, and we create our own reality, and the whole moral relativistic standpoint that comes with the rest of that worldview. But what I want to say is, and what I believe and what I understand through my own real experiences, is that demons, or whatever you want to call them, malevolent beings, bodiless, do exist. And they are messing with us in ways which are very difficult to explain to somebody who doesn't have a clue what it means to be a demon or to be demonically possessed. Hollywood has done a good job at tarnishing that image, or at least trivializing the image to make it seem funny or just plain fictional. But the reality of the possession of people by demons is far scarier and more realistic than any Hollywood film could ever portray. Now, I have a few stories to tell you, so story time, children, gather round, about some experiences in the past that I now understand and made sense of them as demonic attack. And it's going to sound bizarre, but hear me out. Now, you may have seen my Hatman video, where I do a full-length description with images and even a drawing of the Hatman that I saw myself, of a dream where he came to me and chased me down in a bizarre realm, or field, should I say, where my dead relatives were all drinking tea together. Now, if you go watch that first and then come back to this, it'll make sense about what I'm going to say. But it seemed like basically this Hatman entity was tricking me into a false sense of security by surrounding me with my dead relatives. Now, that's important. You have to remember that. It seems like demons have had a track record of being able to mimic dead relatives. Mediums have been exposed and understood to be communicating with demons who like to pretend to be one's dead relative, or the client's dead relative, to the medium. Now, of course, all that's really happening is the demon the medium is in contact with just literally whispers in the medium's ear what to say to the woman, because the demon knew the dead relative really well when they were alive. Because demons like to live through us. The whole point of possession is to experience our experiences as we sin, because they can no longer do that. They don't have senses or a flesh body to experience these God-gifted pleasures that we are forced and pushed to abuse while under the influence of demonic possession. So, an example is that when you go out drinking, it may not necessarily be you that's enjoying the drink as much as you believe it is you. You often say someone has a spirit of something, a spirit of pride, a spirit of envy, the spirit of anger. Spirits can manifest physically in human beings, it seems, through emotion, if not through literal psychedelic physical attack. Now, it can be dangerous. It's not all fun and games when I say these things. When I say psychedelic, it doesn't mean to say this is fun. These things want to kill, steal, and destroy. That's all the thief comes to do, and that's what these things are. There's a history behind demons. Again, I have another video called We Need to Talk About the Nephilim More. Because the Nephilim, the giants of the past, the offspring of fallen angels mating with human women, they are the demons we know of today. The flood was necessary to wipe these abominations off the earth, these flesh-eating, cannibalistic, ever-growing giants and monsters through genetic engineering and gene splicing, which was going on in the ancient past during the times of Noah. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the days of the Son of Man. I believe we're in those times that Jesus was talking about. I believe we are going to start to see genetic engineering come back as it was in those days. Half animal, half machine, half man, hybrid, chimera creatures start to appear more and more. And while we do these things, what we're essentially building together is a new body, a new vessel, a new temple. But this temple won't be a place for God to dwell and the Holy Spirit. This temple is for the Nephilim, not you. And the transhumanists will promise you, perfection, immortality, beauty, strength. You will be harder, better, faster, stronger. But they won't tell you that what you've given up is your soul. You've essentially trapped it. You've forsaken God's temple, which is your body. Now that was a bit of a rant to try and summarise just what demons are. Loosely. At least their history and their past. Giants were in the earth once because of fallen angels mating with women. These giants killed and slaughtered and ate humans. A lot like Attack on Titan, if you've seen this latest cartoon that got really popular in Japan and came over to the West. It's just about that. And you don't know what time zone it's set in. It could be the past, it could be the future. But rest assured, these things are Nephilim that they're talking about. The Nephilim are the disembodied demons. And they were powerful. They had knowledge. They were worshipped. These things were considered men of renown. The heroes of the past in some Greek, Roman kind of culture way. These half man, half god entities want worship. They want to be admired. They want to be looked upon as great and better than human. But because they no longer have a body to do such a thing, then they often live mostly through people, like famous people, let's say, who get the admiration and the fans and the followers and the love. But in the process of them coming into someone's body, dwelling in someone's vessel because that someone in particular gave them permission to be there, they will get comfortable, and the more you allow them to remain, the more of yourself you will lose, and the more they will take over. Now, in the past, I used to smoke a lot of weed, and I still do, but I'm starting to quit, and I'm going to try and quit cigarettes very soon as well, and I'm going to start using a vaporizer instead. But in the past, I used to have a friend who would come round called Neil, and we would just smoke weed together after college. So I was 18, 19 at this time. I'm 24 now. And something happened to me, and I never believed him then, because I didn't have a clue about any of this then. I didn't know anything at all about God or demons or the Illuminati or truth or spirituality or anything. I was an atheistic hedonist. But he looked at me, my friend, and was staring at me, and I looked at him and said, "What's up?" He said, "What do you mean, what's up? What's up with you?" So I looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" "I'm fine." And then he started to explain to me how I'd lifted my arms up into a crucifix position, and I was just stood there, or sat there, should I say, with my arms like that for 5 minutes, just staring intensely at him. And then I just came round, apparently, when I noticed him staring at me. And I didn't believe him, because to me it seemed like none of that had happened. I had just been sat there, looked at him and said, "What's up?" It seemed like I'd lost those 5 minutes in some way. And he was adamant that I did that. But I couldn't remember it. I thought he was lying to me. I thought, this guy is messing with me. This guy's just trying to mess with me. But he seemed adamant. That was scary enough. That really got the ball rolling in my mind, I suppose. Then I went off to uni and I started to learn about the truth. You probably already know my story. If you've been to my channel, if not, you can go find out by just looking at my early videos. But I got into this, for my university project, so I could learn. Well, not so I could do something for my degree, which would be fun, and I'd enjoy making artwork about. So I went on to the truth culture, let's find out what this end of the world hype is all about, blah, 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 blah. And I forgot about that experience. In between, I've had thousands of dreams, which are extremely trippy. And I know there's some entities in there which have messed with me sexually and physically. These things like to play on your own lusts and desires and manifest them in your dreams. To tempt you, let's say. I'm not sure why and what the benefit is, but again, it would just seem to me as though these beings can live in your dreams. They can live through you and experience things with you in your dreams. So maybe that's why they do that. Either way, I was talking about my friend, obviously. That was the first demonic experience I kind of had, which I didn't believe had happened to me. So, like I said, I went to uni, I came back, after 3 years of intense study into these things. And during that time, from the ages of 16 to 23, I'd managed to sleep with about 30 people. Lost the only girl I'd ever loved and loved me, because I was too busy selfishly going after my own desires and lusts, while learning the truth. Like I said, being an atheistic hedonist, going out every weekend, drinking every night a full bottle of wine before we go out to carry on drinking, and then, eating a full bag of MDMA, a half gram of MDMA at a rave, dancing till 6 in the morning, can take its toll after 3 years. And it almost killed me. A lot of my friends failed the degrees because of that kind of lifestyle. Luckily, I got away with it for my degree. I could say and talk about it for my degree because it's art, isn't it? You can kind of just get away with that stuff and with that kind of degree. But other people suffered around me, and I mentally and physically suffered. A hole begins to build up into your mind, body and soul, a void, let's say. The more sin you partake in. Sure, I was sleeping around, great fun, whatever. Yeah, sure, I had a good time, met some great people, blah, 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 blah. But they don't tell you about sex, that when you sleep with someone, I can feel this, I know this happens, and I've heard other people talk about this too, but it seems to me like you give a piece of yourself, spiritually speaking here, a piece of you is given to the person you have that experience with, and vice versa, a piece of them fills that void, or the piece you've removed. Now, when you are promiscuous and live a lifestyle of sleeping around and having sex with many, many people, then you've essentially lost yourself. You've given so much away and received so much from others. Where's your identity anymore? How can you define yourself? Do you define yourself by the other people you've experienced and shared life with? Or do you have a self anymore? I certainly felt like I didn't know who I was. I felt more lost than ever by the end of all this. I felt completely drained. I had no energy left, no life in me, nothing to give anymore. Nothing at all. At university, I messed a few girls around as well, and got messed around by one particular girl, and had my heart broken, and broke many more in the process. Cheated, lied, was all over the place. I didn't know whether I was coming or going. As a result of this attitude of non-commitment and uncertainty consistently, I ended up pushing away those that really mattered to me in my life. I actually used to thank Satan, satirically, of course. Say something really random would happen that just seemed like, how the hell did I do that? Like, one time I was in a pub playing darts with an ex-girlfriend who happened to be there, who I hadn't seen in a while, and I was playing it cool, And I looked at her and said, "See this dart here? This is going straight in the bullseye. Watch." Threw it without hesitation, straight in the bullseye. That's impossible. What are the odds of that happening? Either way, that night I ended up sleeping with her. As though that event led to that in some way, or pushed her over the edge. Obviously, there was conversation a lot more in between. But I didn't need that girl back in my life, and I didn't need to sleep with her. I have other things and other complications on top of that, and doing that only made it more complicated. Could it be I was helped in order to further my desires and lusts by a demon who basically just made sure that dart went in the bullseye? When I was smoking a lot of weed in this shed and my arms went up next to my friend and I started to twitch and my eyes were wide, was I being possessed as a demon, enjoyed and partook in the things I was enjoying and partaking in? The drugs, the attitude, the company, the humour. When I say I used to thank Satan, I used to mean like whenever the dart would go into the bullseye, I'd say something like, "Thanks, Satan," because, you know, Satan's the ruler of this world, blah, 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 you know, and he's helping me out, you know, to sin some more. I considered it a joke then, because I wasn't a Christian. I didn't think demons were real. I didn't think I was being helped. Define help, though, now. Now I realise I wasn't being helped. What seemed good led to destruction. Destruction of my mind. Destruction of my relationships. When I got back from uni, I got into another relationship with a friend who I'd slept with in the past. It only lasted about 5 months. But what happened was the exact same thing that had just happened to me in Lincoln. She was messing me around and didn't really want to be with me. And I was disheartened by this point because I was coming to terms with Christ. And I don't want to be doing this anymore. And she was so lost in the world. Worldly is a good way to describe her. That I realised I'm not going to be able to get on with this person. I'm not going to be able to put up with this evil that she oozes, even though she hasn't got a clue. In the past I didn't see it, but the more I listened to her worldview, her ideologies and her new age mentalities, the more physically sick I started to feel. To the point where I'd had enough. She cancelled a holiday and went on holiday with some other guy, which we'd planned, and I snapped. That was it. I was done with sex, meaningless sex. I was complete and totally done. And now it's been 1.5 years, and I haven't gone near a woman. It's not that I don't have the confidence. It's not that I can't talk to them. It's not that I don't find women attractive. It's that I want more than just meaningless, pointless sex, which will only make me more lost. The point being, I don't think the demons liked that when I begin to change my mind. When I began to change my mind. It was then that this Satan figure I used to thank began to turn on me. I have a sister. A half-sister, actually. We share a different dad. My brother and sister are older than me. My mum gave birth to them with Andrew. And then met my dad, married and had me. So I'm the youngest. And as a result, I've always had quite a distant relationship with my brother and sister. Growing up, children were children, you know, but because of the age gap, I've never really had much of a close relationship with them. You know, obviously they moved out while I still lived here for many years as well, and it was just one of those. Just the way it was. Either way, my sister recently gave birth to Thomas, my nephew, and I was over the moon. I went round to hold Thomas, and see him. And I was happy that life was in our family. And that I understood how important family was finally. God had been working in my life in many ways, and he had been changing me, my heart. Things that I used to enjoy began to repulse me, like meaningless sex, raves, and just the general new age millennial lifestyle. All began to repulse me, and this change happened inside me. In the past, I would have avoided family. I would have assumed I don't need them, and they held me back. But when I held my nephew in my arms, I saw that this is all that matters. Family. A week later, after visiting him for the first time, I find out he's been rushed to hospital. He'd had a brain hemorrhage and lost 3/4 of his brain on the scan. 3/4 of his brain was completely black. Only 1/4 of it was active. And he was there in a coma with a huge scar on the side of his head with a drain to take the blood out. And the doctors were adamant he's probably not going to wake up, and if he does, he'll be brain dead. So I left, knowing that knowledge, and prayed. I got down on my knees and I begged God to spare him. To please just spare his life. He's so young and innocent. But when I was talking to my mum afterwards, she told me something. Something which disturbed me deeply, but something which I was prepared for and understood fully and could educate my mum on. I guess you could almost say it was as though God was kind of giving me wisdom after my prayer to explain to me what had really happened to my nephew Thomas. Now, you see, my sister, like I said earlier, shares a different dad with me, Andrew. Andrew hung himself in 2010. He was depressed. And he'd asked his friend to drive him out to a hotel after saying he'd had an argument with his girlfriend, like normal. And his friend thought nothing of it, but dropped him off at the hotel, in which he'd used his belt and the door frame to do what he wanted to do. And it broke my sister's heart. I was there when she found out from the police, and the scream she gave off still rings in my ears. Being heartbroken, she didn't want to lose him, lose contact, as we all feel when death arrives in our family. So she turned to a medium for help. Remember, this is what my mum was telling me after I prayed. She'd been going to mediums for the past year or two, many of them, to try and get in contact with her dead father. But every medium she went to didn't talk to her about her dad. And apparently they all asked her, "Have you lost a son?" Louise naturally looked back at these mediums and said, "Son? I'm not even pregnant, I haven't had a kid, what are you talking about?" So she drew it up to, man, these people are just useless. They don't know what they're talking about, whatever, never mind. I guess I'm not going to talk to my dad. And then lo and behold, she has her first son, and within a month, he has a detrimental brain hemorrhage, which disables 3/4 of his brain and puts him into a deep coma. Now it almost seems, from her perspective I could imagine, that the mediums knew all along. Wow, there really is power there. They really do know stuff. I'm going to have to go back and maybe they can help me with my dad. They knew about what would happen to Thomas. We're warned in the Bible that if it's the dead you want to seek after, then should you not first ask God for such a thing? I'm paraphrasing. That's basically what it's saying. If you want to speak to the dead, then you go to God, the creator of all living beings, to get that permission. No man or woman can do that for you or have the power. But demons can pretend to be your relatives. They knew them better than you ever will. They knew them intimately because they lived through them like they lived through you. I think because my sister went to this medium, the demon attached to the medium cursed her and her future firstborn son. So when the child was born and the demon forced his hemorrhage on it, from my sister's perspective, it seems like fate. Like there was no way to avoid it, and it was written in the stars, perhaps, because the medium said so. But the demon just transferred over to my sister, who had defiled herself with the medium, and then into the child. And that's the price you have to pay for necromancy, for sorcery and witchcraft. And it's not God doing it. He warns us. He warns us against these things and against doing these things, because the consequences, what the thief will do if you let him in, is terrible. And he doesn't want that for you. He doesn't want that for us. He sent his only son to die for us so we could be free from these things and protect ourselves from them with his authority. So that's what I did. I told my mum everything. The story of, I think it was King Saul, who sought after mediums rather than... He sought after mediums to get information about whether he'd win his battles, I think, and he was punished severely for that. These things cause curses. These things aren't good when you want to speak to a medium. Mediums have no power in of themselves, just the demon they work with gives them all their power. And it's all based in deception. I explained all of this to my mum, and my mum kind of understood. Although she's not a Christian and never really heard any of these things before, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And then I got down on my knees again and I prayed again. This time, making it clear, God, I know what my sister did. I know what's happened to Thomas, and I know why it's happening. So I prayed for the demon to be cast out of that child. I prayed for him to for the innocence of him to be freed from this tyranny and malevolence that had been brought onto him through the sins of his mother. When I went to visit him in the hospital and saw him there with the tubes in his head, I was heartbroken. But he had opened his eyes, at least by that point. And my sister's husband's grandmother was there, who I have never really met before. And I noticed she had a cross on her neck. She was wearing a cross, nothing fancy, very modest. She came up to my sister as she was leaving, gave her a hug and said, "The whole church is praying for you." I have the whole church praying for you. And I looked down at this woman, and at Thomas and my sister, and I realised God is working through this family. He is hearing our prayers. Not only am I praying for this one baby, but a whole church of Christians is praying for this one child too. For the demon to come out of him. Though my sister has never heard me say these things or understood that's what was going on, I knew through my research that is what is happening. So I prayed. And miracles do come true. Thomas is awake. He came through. His scars almost healed. And he can smile, he can laugh, he can look around, he can move his arms which were once paralysed. By some kind of miracle. He's actually alive and happy and comfortable and not in pain. And can see and feel. He will be disabled mentally. There's only so much that can be healed from that. But the doctors told us he was on death's door, wouldn't wake up and would be a vegetable. But that didn't happen. Under this whole experience, my sister was being accused of child abuse, you have to understand. Because there was no explanation for why this had happened to the child. The doctors could not find a physical or medical reason. There was no reason this child should have had a brain hemorrhage at all. For a very long time, they had the one theory that perhaps he didn't get his vitamin K injection at birth, which is standard procedure for all babies at birth. And if he did get his injection, which is more than likely, then it's a 1 in 500 million chance the body would reject it. So this never should have happened to the child. The odds of it happening are next to none. But it still did. Because my sister had a debt to pay for what she did. Or at least the demons saw it that way. I like to think prayer saved that child. My nephew. It really did work. He's pulled out of it. And he has a chance at life. But like I said, my sister was being accused by social services because there was no medical cure, and she was being treated as a suspect for child abuse through the whole thing, which only made the whole situation worse and more stressful for the entire family, because Satan is like that. Anyway, I've explained a few things to you, haven't I, here? So, I talked about a time when I blacked out for 5 minutes and scared the hell out of my friend. I've talked about the time, obviously, my sister has dealt with mediums and the power of prayer came through to fight these things. I've explained where these things come from, why they want to do this to us. Partially, obviously there's a spiritual war going on right now in heaven, and although we are the targets, God are these beings' real enemy, or at least Satan's enemy, and we are made in his image, so he'll attack us primarily. You see, Satan knows his fate is sealed. He is going to hell, the place reserved for him and the fallen angels and these unclean spirits. There's no alternative for him. That's it. But our fate isn't sealed. we still have a choice, a chance. We can still redeem ourselves. Now, the power of Christ to fight demons, I understand if you're not really a Christian thinking conspiracy theorist, you might not think Christ necessarily has to be the way to do this. Maybe it's just my belief makes that happen. No, I'm telling you now, this is real. There's power in the name of Jesus Christ, literally. As I say those words and those frequencies vibrate, it affects things. It's a powerful weapon against demons, the things we're talking about, the things that attacked me, possess me and my family on a regular basis, the things we're consistently battling against, the things many have accepted into their lives and love and cherish and glorify and worship rather than repent of. These things are real, and Jesus Christ is the only way to protect yourself against it. About 3 weeks ago, now, something happened to me here at home. I was in my living room, sat on my sofa, and the television was on through with the HDMI cable on my laptop. I was watching a YouTube video, just zoning out really. I wasn't even watching the video. Well, I was until something started to happen to me, which is why I'm probably compelled to make this video now, because this is fresh. This happened 3 weeks ago to me, and I'm not making any of this up. While sat on the sofa with the TV on in the background, my dog in front of me on the floor just sat there. Something came over me, and it felt like my brain was being scrambled with a whisk. Spiritually speaking. If you've ever done salvia, you'll probably understand what I'm talking about as a psychedelic property. The experience was very psychedelically inclined, but not in the way of acid or DMT where you have relative control. It was more I was being taken over and my mind was being invaded. This is what it felt like. And the room began to spin with a repetitive hum in the background to all of this. It was really bizarre. But then it became circular in motion with the room. The sound started to sync with the visions I was seeing, and the room started to loop. Like a dum 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 dum, and I was getting lost in this loop. Timeless. And intense fear engulfed my chest. My very core of my being. As this was happening to me, and I was spiraling out, and my vision was spinning. I could feel my eyes rolling. And the dog, Poppy, who's with me right now, just chilling, she was also acting strange, so that made me freak out. It made me realise this isn't something happening just to me. Something's in the room. And it's also affecting my dog. She was snarling and growling, which is very out of character, but slamming her face into the carpet and rubbing it on the carpet while kind of scratching and kicking and jumping up and down. It's like she was dealing with what I was dealing with, and the whole experience must have lasted about 15 seconds. And it got more intense to the point where it was unbearable. And literally, I literally said, Jesus Christ, help me. And as soon as the E had been pronounced at the end of me, not even a second later, my phone bleeps with a text, and it's a really close friend of mine saying to me, I'm on my way. That's all he said. It's the text telling me he's on his way around to my house. So I'm on my way. As soon as I called for Jesus Christ to help me, and I was snapped out of it instantly because of the noise of that text. It just snapped me out. All the fear left, everything left. You know, that was just me again, and the dog started acting normal. She was just looking at me, wagging the tail. But that scared me. You know, that felt like death. Like something had literally come into the room, created an aura in that place which was killing me. And I just felt myself disintegrate into it before yelling out for Jesus Christ to help me. And then just that ring just snapped me out of it. I'm on my way. You think about what that even means if you just think about Christ himself, you know, he's coming back. And that was the message that snapped me out of this moment where I was going to a dark place, a very dark place. That is something no one can convince me otherwise. That really solidified everything for me. He's real, and it has power. And I'm worried because I think everything I'm experiencing is not out of my league because of the experience I've had with psychedelic drugs. This was something that it didn't scare me as much as it probably would others, because I recognise the experience is similar to something like DMT or salvia, as I mentioned earlier, which are the most potent psychedelics. So it wasn't as shocking for me, but for others who have never had that feeling before, I don't think they could handle it if it suddenly came upon them like it did me. Now, we all know what CERN's doing. We all know these people are opening up portals, you know, trying to get to the other side and let these Nephilim entities back here in bigger droves, bigger possessive ability, I suppose. And with the state of the world being as it is, with more death and fear and sacrifice to these things than ever, more blood, innocent blood screaming out than ever before, it's very possible that what I experienced could come upon everyone else very soon. And people aren't going to be able to cope. Men's hearts will fail them for fear. I felt like my heart was failing me for fear in that moment. But I knew how to protect myself. And the thing failed. The entity failed. So, you know, people you need to take this seriously. This is real. It's taken me 3 years to accept this, you know. And when you really pay attention and really start to see these things, the devil will come for you. He will throw everything at you. It has been rough. And it gets weird. Like, really weird, like I've been explaining to you. You know, things start to happen which are supernatural. And you start to realise you've been living in a dream world up until this point, and reality is far trippier and scarier than the dream world that the corporations and the Illuminati have made for you. Oh, it's far more serious and terrifying, and you need to know this stuff. We all need to start to know this stuff, because when these experiences become manifest more so, like we're already seeing mass demonic possessions, people messing around with Ouija boards and random outbursts of violence and mass hysteria. You know, these things are happening now. And don't think you're immune from it. You're not. There's nothing special about any man. We all need help from God and Jesus. It's simple. Remember this, if anything, when it does happen. Even if you mock and laugh now, remember that. It's serious, and that's your only weapon against these things. His name. Either way, I'm probably just going to leave it there for now. This is a partial testimony. There's many more stories I could tell you, but we're coming to the hour now. If you guys have any input or any experiences you want to share as well, please put it in the comments section, of course. If there's any input you want to put into my own experiences I may not have brought up or anything, I'm not going to put images to this video. I'm sorry, it's not in my usual style. I just feel like I want to say this and get the message out there quickly. Obviously, this isn't anything presented where I'm going to make it flashy. This is what it is. You know, I'm saying this because you need to know. Thank you all. God bless. I'll speak to you soon.